Human civilization is a colossal, mechanical ship of Theseus, a towering machine grinding its way across a barren and tropic landscape. This machine is bound by the law of necessity. Looking at this kinetic graph, you can see that the system must generate enough energy to stay above this critical threshold. It has to maintain a minimum forward velocity to outpace its own internal decay. There is no single rational pilot at the helm. Instead, the cockpit is filled with millions of different hands. The machine is steered by the chaotic, conflicting inputs of the massive human population trapped inside. Every operator brings their own desires and competing ethical vectors. One group pulls left, another pulls right. They constantly argue over the direction of travel and the management of the engine, generating massive internal friction at the control panel. Survival is never guaranteed by the simple fact that the machine exists. It depends entirely on whether this disorganized crowd can generate enough forward momentum to outpace the friction they create among themselves. True systemic cohesion is an unnatural, structurally expensive state to maintain. Left to its own devices, a complex organization will quickly drift toward fragmentation. Robert Hooke's drawing illustrates the exact requirements for a functioning body. The structured grid on the left shows tight boundary maintenance, requiring aligned incentives and error correction. When these conditions fail, it devolves into the cluster on the right, a conflict network cannibalizing its own architecture. To prevent that decay, a system relies on information viscosity. This is the structural resistance, the cultural coherence, the shared laws, and the mutual trust that physically binds a complex society together and keeps it from disintegrating. A civilization only stays intact because it constantly expends immense energy to maintain that viscosity, fighting a continuous war against the natural gravity of decay. In the dark corridors of our machine, human greed and laziness act as measurable physical forces. They combine into the negative Epsilon chaos vector, a force actively stripping the mecha of its viscosity. The first faction driving this chaos are the Extractors. They engage in extractive optimization, stripping critical parts from the hull for short-term personal gain. While the Extractors act in the name of efficiency, they are actually creating hidden energetic short circuits. Every piece they remove bleeds the machine's life force into the void. Then we have the Destroyers. Their contribution is depletion without purpose. They burn the machine's valuable fuel to run endless, pointless cycles of internal conflict, generating heat but zero forward momentum. Finally, the Idlers add to the track. By refusing to act at all, they become dead weight. They fail to provide the structural spine, the necessary resistance and support required to push the machine forward. These three factions drain the mecha's information viscosity. They hollow out a robust machine until it resembles an inverted pyramid, a fragile shell balancing precariously on a single brittle point of failure. As the mecha moves, it becomes highly efficient at generating a massive surplus of wealth, advanced technology, and processing power. This success creates its own unique danger. This immense new power drastically increases the internal fluid velocity of the society. The machine is pushed to walk faster, forcing a higher volume of energy through its systems than ever before. This is the surplus trap. In fluid mechanics, there is a breaking point known as the Reynolds number. Because the Extractors have stripped away the machine's structural viscosity, the system cannot handle the increased speed. The flow of society violently crosses the threshold from smooth, predictable progress into destructive turbulence. When you hit that number, the physical reality is immediate. The mecha shakes. Regulatory systems cascade into failure. Bad actors reach critical mass, and the entire structure buckles under its own momentum. The collapse occurs from an overwhelming, unregulated surplus. It is a failure of structural routing, triggered when a system generates more energy than its stripped-down architecture can physically handle. There is only one force capable of counteracting this decay: the positive Epsilon order vector. This represents the builders, the operators who actively replace the rotting timber with resilient new infrastructure. The builders operate on physics rather than abstract morality. They treat the system's exhaustion as a diagnostic tool. using fatigue to pinpoint exactly where the machine's frame needs reinforcement. Human history has repeatedly produced foundational teachers, figures who acted as apex builders. They laid down the original structural codes designed to maximize the machine's viscosity and maintain its integrity. These figures provided an index without the content. This is a universal geometric map for aligning human survival, a structural guide that transcends local context and works reliably in any era. The builders implement structural inclusion, recognizing that every operator in the cockpit is an architectural equal, running the same hardware. By establishing this parity, they can re-engineer the system's internal metric tensor, adjusting the machine's internal transition probabilities so that the path of least resistance naturally flows towards synergistic complexity. We are all living hypotheses testing the limits of this machine. Choosing the friction of repair over the ease of extraction makes ethical behavior the inescapable thermodynamic physics of our survival.